So you are all being recorded. And welcome everyone to Stamp Chat. Thank you so much for joining us. It feels like it's been forever, but it really hasn't been that long. Our last Stamp Chat was on Friday. As you may have heard from Mr. English's town hall meeting, we will be dialing back on our Stamp Chats about 3 days a week. That will enable us to refine our content. And then Mr. Gary Lowe will also be hosting a Stamp Chat-esque show that goes more into the deep philately. So just letting you know that there'll be some minor changes. So continue to look up stamps.org for our upcoming schedule. But have no fear, we're here. And there's plenty of content on the website to keep you feeling connected, etc. Thank you so much to the APS members from all over the world who've congregated today. Thank you for your encouragement of the programming, and thank you for your continued support through membership. We are a nonprofit organization, as you are well aware, and we appreciate those checks that you send every year to ensure a legacy continues. Today's special guest is Stan Cromlish. He comes to us from North Carolina. Stan has a really robust online presence in terms of philately, and is known throughout the APS community for being very passionate, enthusiastic about stamps. Today, we're going to enjoy a stamp story, really, about the origins of his love of philately and how he got to experience his family through philately. And I'm sure a lot of you will be able to relate and appreciate his unique tale and how stamps have emboldened his life, and enriched his life and his family too. So thank you so much for joining us, Stan, and welcome. We're going to have you take the lead.
All right. Thank you, Heidi, and thank you to the APS for allowing me to tell you basically my stamp story, or my philatelic journey through my grandfather's eyes. Just a quick little background. My grandfather was born 105 years ago this week, and he died 1 year and 4 months and 21 days before I was born. So I never met the man in the picture, Richard S. Cromlish Sr., but I am his namesake. I am the third generation Richard S. Cromlish. So this is my stamp story about the grandfather I never knew. So on February 4th, 1969, my grandfather, Dick Cromlish, passed away at the young age of 53 from cancer, thus beginning a philatelic purgatory. From February of 69, his collection remained untouched in a cabinet in my grandmother's house. I found it at age 13 in 1983, but my hand was slapped and she said, "Thou shalt not touch it." This is the woman who never remarried after the love of her life passed away in 1969. The education of a philatelist begins April 2014. This is the house that where my grandmother and grandfather lived for most of their lives. If you see the little sun porch over there to the right, they built a new den over there, and that's where grandfather kept his stamp collection. On April 2014, my Aunt Susan was throwing out a whole lot of what she thought was trash in yesterday's news. So when I found out that she was throwing out the stamp collection and all of his legacy, I'm like, hold on, we're not going to do that. I took it. And at that point, a love affair with stamps, postal history, and covers was ignited. One thing I figured out, he was born in 1915 on East End Avenue in Wilkinsburg, Pennsylvania. And it's only fitting that he was a member of the Wilkinsburg Stamp Club. And his collection were several of the world-renowned Wilkinsburg Stamp Club souvenir sheets of Upper Slobovia. He was a member of the Wilkinsburg Stamp Club from the late 1930s through 1969. I just recently applied for membership in the Wilkinsburg Stamp Club. The Society of Philatelic Americans. He came to, quick story, quick sidebar. He played basketball. He was very athletic. In the summer of his senior year of high school, he thumbed his way down to a little high school called Augusta Military Academy, and walked on, got a military scholarship in 1933-34 school year, and basically sent his mom a telegram saying, "I'm not coming home. Coach wants me to play in a basketball tournament this week. It costs $50 for the semester. Wire money or tell me I can't. Stop." And he sent that to his mother. After that, he got a scholarship to Elon College in Burlington, North Carolina, from 1934 to 1938. And I have not found that he attended the Society of Philatelic Americans annual convention in Asheville, North Carolina, but I haven't found that he didn't either. But I do know his membership dates from 1945 as member number 11136. Funny thing is, I have not found where he was a member of the American Philatelic Society. I don't quite understand, because he was a member of the Wilkinsburg Stamp Club. He was a member of the Society of Philatelic Americans. He joined as member number 2002 of the American First Day Cover. There are First Day covers that date from the 1920s through the moon landing stamp of 1969, 5 months after his death. I do believe that First Day covers are his first love and were his first love, because he's got more of those than anything else. Funny story on this next slide. In 1938, Harley Gaston enticed my grandfather with a $100 stipend to move to a little town called Belmont, North Carolina, and teach history. And it was there he got involved in the local stamp club when it was founded in 1947. Gene Ziss, who was the president of the Charlotte Philatelic Society, had the earliest known postcard announcing a meeting dated to 1955. The postcard you see on your screen dates back to 1947. So this is now the earliest known meeting date for the Charlotte Philatelic Society. So this is a pretty cool piece of postal history. And for me, he saved everything. He and my grandmother, thankfully, saved everything. I've got all of the correspondence one way from him to my grandmother while he was in the Army Air Corps during World War II. So, postal history. That played a key role. That really plays a key role in understanding who the grandfather I never knew was in life. Everybody knows June 6, 1944 was D-Day. I don't know what he was sending to the Philatelic Agency in D.C. at that time, but he didn't send it because I guess he figured out that it was D-Day once they announced it in 1944. So he saved this cover for D-Day. William Leighton Cromlish, 1849 to 1925, spent his entire career working on the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad. This first day cover from 1952 was saved by my grandfather because of that family connection. Albert Leighton Cromlish and John Bowman Cromlish both worked in the steel industry for their entire careers as general superintendents for United States Steel Corp or Carnegie Steel. This first day cover from 1957, celebrating 100 years of steel production, celebrates their contribution to American society. Postcard, May 6th, 1942. Everybody knows what's happened on December 7th, 1941. The Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. And 6 months later, almost to the day, my grandfather enlists in the Army Air Corps with a wife and my dad on the way. The need to serve was great. He was in Miami Beach, Florida, in training in September, on September 18th, 1942. That day was special because my dad was born. And there were several letters and postcards and telegrams on that day going back and forth congratulating him on the birth of my dad. May 7th and May 8th, 1945, Germany surrendered in Reims, France on May 7th, and victory in Europe was declared on May 8th, 1945. 2 momentous days ending World War II in Europe. And we've got postal history. We've got VE Day, May 8th, 1944, postmarked Chattanooga. And in a neighboring town, Mount Holly, North Carolina, May 7th, we've got the VE Day, the May 7th surrender of Germany, marked with the victory, win the war stamp. And another key piece of his collection are autographed first day covers. Operation High Jump, Antarctic Expedition 1946 and 1947. He got the autograph of Robert Byrd for this. What he did was he would mail letters to these famous people, and they would graciously respond with autographs on first day covers. Who knows Spencer Tracy and Bing Crosby? And the first day of issue of the Hollywood of the 50th anniversary of motion pictures celebrate Spencer Tracy, Bing Crosby. I find this postal history pretty cool. It's not what I'm interested in, but it's just cool to think that they would take the time to do this just to answer the request. But what's even cooler is the next one. Anybody know what happened on September 2nd, 1945? In Tokyo Bay, the Japanese surrendered, signed the surrender papers, ending World War II for the entire world. 19 days later, Chester W. Nimitz, Pacific Fleet Admiral, mailed a letter back to my grandfather autographing the first day cover bearing the first day postmark for Nimitz, West Virginia. This admiral had just finished winning World War II, yet he could take the time to write a letter to my grandfather. To me, that's just impressive. That's just speaks volumes of the man. This is where, with Nimitz, and here is George S. Patton. Oh, excuse me. once again, these covers, Patton would die after a truck accident in December of 1945. So once again, timing is everything. One of my grandfather's trademarks is his timing was impeccable in anything and everything he did. So for me, just finding some of these different historical relics or historical documents. And on February 4th, 1969, he succumbed to melanoma cancer and left behind a legacy of service. It's only appropriate that his last cover from an Art Master subscription is the moon landing of 1969. And with that, my philatelic journey started in 2014 and will continue on into the future because of the desire ignited by his collection. Thank you so much. That's really all I had.
No, that's terrific. I had to unmute myself. Thank you so much, Stan, for sharing that. Stamp stories are always very fascinating. It's like a fingerprint. So thank you. Friends, does anybody want to talk with Stan or have a question?
I have a question. My name is Ann Grunbaum.
One moment, ma'am. Let me just mute a mic, hon. Hold on a moment so we can hear. Go ahead, ma'am, please.
Okay. I was very interested in your story, Stan. My collection started from my father, who was born in 1926, who also had first day covers sent to him. But my question is, I have albums, and I don't know if anybody knows this, that were given to me by people from their grandfathers or their uncles, International Scott Junior postage albums in 1943 and 1933. My question is, they do have a lot of international stamps in them. They're old stamps. And is it best just to keep those stamps in that album and add to that album? Or do collectors recommend taking them out and putting them in a newer album?
Yes.
I pulled them out of the old International myself. My grandfather had an old International, but I did it because I wanted I wanted a different look, and they were hinged, and I chose to go the mounted route, even though they were, used, unused. Obviously, none of them were never hinged, because everything that came out of his collection was hinged. But I've built my own albums.
And where did you just download other pages? Because the two newer worldwide albums that I have don't have all the spaces that the older album has, because I have a lot of old Germany stamps, France stamps, Hungarian stamps, British stamps, that in a current album, they don't have the spaces.
I bought a subscription to stampalbums.com and printed my own pages. I don't know who else does that, but that was the way I went because it gave me more control.
I just did that. Someone recommended. I just did that and bought that subscription, so I may do that. Thank you.
Can I say something?
Tom Bowman.
Ma'am,
What?
if they're hinged, like Stan said, they could leave a mark on the back of this. Yeah, if they were hinged into that album, they could leave a mark on the back of the stamp that you may want to soak and remove the hinge to keep that mark from coming in, and put it in a mount, because that does protect the back of the stamp as well. But I'm glad you are continuing with the collection.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Stan's showing one.
And Mark and Had was there? Oh, there's Stan.
Yes, there's a stamp mount right there.
Thank you.
Okay, friends, do we have any other questions, or does anybody else have a a story that's
I've,
Go ahead,
I've
Rick,
got a comment.
please.
Um, I think the reason that Nimitz took the time to do that was because after September 2nd, he probably had a lot of time on his hands after he had beaten the Japanese.
He probably had a whole lot of time on his hands after September 2nd. I mean, he wasn't having to keep MacArthur happy. And we won't go there, but yeah.
Oh, and also a possible idea that the reason that your grandfather didn't join APS was because in those days they didn't have stamp chats.
That could be it.
Here, here.
That's all I've got to say.
Wonderful.
And
Thanks for a great presentation, Stan.
thank you. And it looks like Jeffrey Prosser was born. His dad was born in Wilkinsburg, Pennsylvania. Wow. Small world.
Small world. It's weird how many roads lead to Pennsylvania. It's very strange. Very strange.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I regret that we lost Markand. He had something to say, but I'm scanning the gallery here and I don't see anything. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you.
He may be back.
Go ahead. Yeah, he could be back. Does anyone else have something to say, or what do you enjoy collecting yourself, Stan? What's your
My favorite is early U.S. and with a early U.S. by 1847 to 1922, the first 75 years of postage stamps. And right now I'm actually into learning about all of the Washington Franklin heads of 1908 to 1922 and reading the expert's book, reading Miccarelli's, learning all about rotary press printing versus flat plate printing versus offset printing. So that's been very interesting to get that education.
it's perpetual.
And I just completed my Trans-Mississippi and my Columbians. So my grandfather had through the 15 cent of the Columbians, and he had through the 10 cent of the Trans-Mississippi. And so I filled in the blanks up to the $5 Columbian and the $2 bridge. So, that made me proud. I filled in what he didn't have.
Rick's big smile. That's nice. Yeah, what a great way to keep a legacy alive. Oh, goody, Mark and Dabe is back. Mark and Dabe, if you can hear us, go ahead and let your comment unmute yourself. But I love the way that did you share that with your family, Stan?
I did. They loved it. Yes, they loved it. Mark, and I heard you had a question or a comment.
Yeah, he's on mute.
And Hal, looks like Hal does.
Oh, go ahead, Hal.
I can't be here today without thanking Stan for getting me started on Stamp Chats. I attended one of, maybe it was his first virtual Stamp Club chat, and ended up signing on very early, and we talked for a long time, and certainly enjoyed today's presentation. And Stan, it continues to frighten me how many parallels we have in our lives and our philatelic histories. But I just wanted to say thanks, and again, really enjoyed the presentation.
Thank you. About 8 weeks ago when convocation started, or coronation, the quarantine and the social distancing, I said, what can I do? And the first Sunday, I said to the Virtual Stamp Club on Facebook, let's have a meeting. So I got my WebEx teams set up, WebEx meeting set up, and it was it was before y'all started doing it was the Sunday before y'all started doing the stamp chats the very next week.
That's awesome,
So
Dan.
yeah.
Thank you. You're the pioneer. Thank you. Markin, go ahead, hon.
Yeah, so today it was a very interesting talk from Stan, and I would like to share a little of my experience. People asks me that how did you came into the philately? And I started like that. I always reply like that my father was a stamp collector and it came in a blood. And my father, when he was just 7 year old, he used to go to the post office after the school, waiting for a postman to come out, and then asking the postman very politely, sir, do you have any covers with the foreign stamps? And the postman used to search in the pile and say, yes, I have two today. And then my father used to follow the postman until he delivers the mail to the recipient, and then very politely ask the recipient, if you don't need the envelope, I collect stamps. Can I have those beautiful stamps, please? So that came in my blood.
That is very cool, Markin. I like that.
And in 2005, so from my very early days, when I started understanding the things, I came to know about stamps and philately when I was 6 or 7 year old, and everything was happening in my house. But my father went to the stock market business in '84 when I was 7 year old, okay? And I just started understanding philately, and I knew a little about it that my father is doing something with stamps. And he moved in the stock market business, and the philately was zero for nearly 21 years in our house. And in 2005, I was renovating his bedroom. So this everything, the stamp collection, etc., was sitting in the attic. You know, the upstairs in the room, they have the attic. So it was there, and everything came down because the room was under renovation. Everything was sitting in my living room. My father decided, let me sell this now. I haven't looked at anything for nearly 20 years. And he was looking at me, you guys won't understand what is this, you know, so it is better I sell. And I asked him, Dad, can you give me a chance? Because I was a businessman. So he showed me some envelopes of the Japanese occupation of Burma covers. And I was going to London. Fortunately, at that time, he gave it to me and I took it with me. And he told me some prices. So I want 150 pounds for this one. I want 300 pounds for this one. And I was looking at him. Dad, are you mad? Are you crazy? Who is going to pay 150 pounds and 300 pounds for such rubbish? And he said, Martin, can you please try for me? I said, obviously, I will try for you. And then I went to London and I sold everything. And the moment I got money in my hand, and then I thought, oh my God, there is something in this hobby. And I can also make money because I was young. So I got deeper, deeper, and deeper. And I also became a collector. Initially, I started helping him because he was a dealer. And then we resumed the business. We re-established the farm. And we gone internationally. And my father was a member of the American Stamp Dealer Association in 1980s, where the exchange rate of the Indian rupees to the US dollar was nearly 12 rupees, and nowadays it is 76. And he used to pay $150 to American Stamp Dealer Association in those days. So we had a long association with that. And then I tried to attend the 2006 World Exhibition in America, but Washington DC. But unfortunately I didn't got the visa within the time, so I was not able to attend. But that's what the whole journey. And there is a lot more to say, but enough for now. Thank you very much for allowing me.
Very interesting, Markand. Very interesting.
Yes.
Stan, thank you.
And that perseverance that your father had to follow the postmaster from house to house, that's the perseverance that you have to this day, Markin. Truly, truly.
Yeah, so that was in my blood, and suddenly I had a spark in 2005, and I started, and I'm still doing, and I'm thoroughly enjoying the hobby, and I'm doing everything. We are stockbroker, and we have 3 big public limited companies. We are also in commodities and derivatives, etc. But that is our main business. And philately is our side business. But we are not considering it as a business. That's the family love affair. We have also published a book on the 1929 airmail stamps of India, for which one day I will give a talk in the APS stamp chat. And we published a book. That's the family publication. Me, my father, and my sister. So in my house, we are nearly everybody is a stamp collector, and everybody understands philately. Apart from my beautiful wife, who looks after the kitchen.
You have to have one non-philatelist in the house.
That's right.
Maintain order or something like that.
Yeah, to balance.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. I think these are my most favorite parts of the chat, is finding out what the origin story of everyone's hobby. So
yeah, that's why I came to attend the Stan's talk, because he said that he wants to talk about his grandfather, etc. And I was very curious, because I got inherited the hobby from my father.
I'll be right back. I actually wrote a book myself.
Wow.
Actually, I wrote 2 books. Let me rephrase that.
Excellent. I can see that Hal Turner and Rick Howell are with smiling faces, so they are enjoying the story.
The grandfather I never knew. I wrote, this is his early years from 1915 to 1945. And the Johnson Family Chronicles, which is a historical fiction, a small town family's journey during World War II, from December 7th to about December 7th, 41 to June of 1942. These two books were sparked by finding my grandfather's stamp collection.
that's great, Stan. That's the kind of fuel that I like to sprinkle around post or social media to get people excited, because for genealogists, this is such a great hobby to pick up. Look how much you learned about your family through the postal history.
Yes. And if you see in the background, there are some boxes that have a whole bunch of letters in them that I have not gone through yet from my grandfather and grandmother.
I like how you said they didn't throw anything out.
Yes, I would, I don't know if you call them hoarders or not, because the house was spick and span. It was, and everything was filed in something.
That's the best way. You can't ask for better than that.
No, you can't.
Perfectly archived.
Yes.
Well, friends, if there's nothing left to say, I'd love to say thank you to Stan for putting together this very intimate portrait of his family, and to explain how his genesis of the love of philately. And thank you, Markin, coming to us from India. Thank you for sharing your stamp story. Friends, if you have a wild hair and you'd like to be on Stamp Chat and share your story, by all means, please let me know. We could probably have 2 guests on one show. These are all great ways to share the hobby and get people excited, because it's these stories that really serve as seeds and pollinate the excitement and get the wheels turning for folks that haven't yet approached the hobby. So I do ask you to feel free to get in touch with me, Heidi@stamps.org, or on any of the social media platforms. Whenever you're direct messaging, it's this gal who's getting it. So if you can't remember Heidi at Stamps, go through these social media channels. Stan Cromlish is on Facebook. He's also on Twitter. If you want to give a shout out to your handle, Stan.
It is on Twitter. It's Stan Cromlish. On Facebook, it's on Twitter. It's at Stan Cromlish, and on Facebook, I believe it's also at Stan Cromlish. Send me a friend request. I will be happy to connect. And Hal, that's a different cat.
Oh yeah, good eye.
She doesn't show up for every meeting. She's afraid the big cat will wake up and find out that she doesn't have a pass to be down here in the man cave. So this is May. She's the little cat, and Maggie's the big cat. So
That is it.
adopted both of them out of the same cage, out of the local shelter about 6 years ago.
Aww.
I think Mark-Ann found me.
Mark found you.
I started following Stan.
Thank you.
Gone.
There you go.
All right. Oh, what's up, Tom?
Hey, any of you guys have a time machine?
I wish.
I'm asking. I wrote an article today for our local paper, stamp paper. This is a little postcard from 1928 from a stamp guy in Bethlehem selling stamps. Now, if you would have bought everything in this thing for $5.23, it worked out to a calculation that'd be worth $2,700 today.
No kidding.
But that's what Stan's inflation rate divider. These are the kind of things that twerk my button sometimes. You see like a simple thing like this, people would have said, oh, okay, stamp dealer. No, I go a step further and figure out all the different ones. Stan, I'll send you a copy of it.
That would be great, Tom. You know me. I like numbers like that. I like playing with stuff like that.
So and I write the story every month for our stamp club, just so I'm trying to get other guys interested in some of the covers. So not working so far. They'd rather soak the stamp off than keep the cover.
Really?
Really?
Oh no.
You should have seen how many covers I saved that are out at APS right now, either for sale or back with Lenny and Darlene, of covers from all over the world that during World War II.
Whoa. Oh.
They're kind of crumpled up. That's why they're back there.
That's my favorite part of the APS is in the back room. That's the best.
Yeah.
Thousands, millions of covers and stamps. It's wonderful.
That's it.
All right.
I'm guilty. I've not been to Bellefonte and the Match Factory yet. So as soon as Coronication's over and everything's open back up, I will have to come to Bellefonte.
Please.
Let me know when you're coming up.
Don't know. Like I said, when Coronication's over.
For all of us, yes. Everybody, please, and you come to the APS and we'll have a great time in Bellefonte together. It'll be a lovely experience. So, well, thanks, Penny. I see you joined the call, and thank you to everybody on the line, and Mark-Ann and Basil and Stuart and Richard Judd and Ann and Rebecca, Hal, Tom, Sharon, Dennis, Marty. Thank you so much for joining the call today. Thank you for participating in these chats. Again, we will be reducing the number just a little bit to 3 a week, but have no fear. We're with you all the way. Check out stamps.org for continued updated information. And remember, we've got the Adopt a Book. So if you have a very favorite philatelic book, you, through a donation beginning at $50, can get a book plate in there, and you are immortalized and sharing the love of philately. So thank you so much for joining us. Our next stamp chat will be on Friday. We will have James Gavin from Rhodesian Study Circle, so from around the world. And he's going to be talking about social media and philately. So for our friends that are involved in, like Stan is involved with his digital club, we'll want to rally the troops and see how we can really start to harness Facebook and begin to make the quantum leap into the digital realm, which all of you, my hat is off and I'm curtsying. Thank you so much. You're doing a beautiful job. So let's go out there and pollinate the digitization of philately while still appreciating
Thank you
the
very
analog, of
much.
course. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you Friday. Thank you. Be safe.
Thank
Be
you,
well.
Heidi. Thank you, Heidi.
My
Yes,
pleasure,
Dan.
Thank
See you, Heidi.
friend.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye. Thank
See
you.
you, Heidi.
See you.
Bye, Stan.
See ya. Bye-bye.